Welcome back to another episode of Dueling Banjos. Today we're going to be talking about the film Maps to the Stars, directed by David Cronenberg, starring Julianne Moore, John Cusack, Robert Pattinson, and a smattering of others. And right off the bat, obviously Maps to the Stars is a very biting satire of Hollywood. All of the characters serve as sort of send-ups of traditional Hollywood people, Hollywood elite as we know them, the cliches about them, but it's obviously taken to an extreme. So you have primarily Havana Sagrand, who's some washed-up actress, desperate for work and just erratic, no empathy whatsoever, just totally self-absorbed, and is perceived by the very industry she's in as used up. And there's constant references to how she's old and she stinks and stuff like that. And so that's obviously sort of a exaggerated presentation of a once notable star. But I think that the primary sort of messaging or at least in terms of audience relatability is from Agatha, who's more of the outsider who comes in, and obviously she had burned her parents' house down. And I just get this sense that she's sort of the outside perspective of Hollywood. She's coming in with this sort of grand idealism of sort of a world of where dreams come true, a world where everything is nice and comfortable, only to find that everybody has sort of their secrets, everybody's hiding things, and everybody's self-interested. And so all of the characters sort of serve as a presentation of those toxic traits of celebrity culture, Hollywood types.
Yeah, well, first of all, Maps to the Stars is kind of a nasty movie. I would say the anti-Hollywood genre doesn't really work. I give the movie, it's got good psychological insight, but the anti-Hollywood thing doesn't work. And the reason why is because you have to address why people want stardom. Everyone wants stardom. Everyone's still going to try to get it. So to show the negative effects of having once been a star and no longer being able to be one, or the desire to be a star and the struggle that entails and the nasty personalities that come with being a star, we already know this. So the satire kind of falls flat because it's still something that everyone will want. It's like, is it? Yeah, it's like...
Because the very people involved don't want it. Cronenberg doesn't want to work with a major studio.
Yeah, but my
point, Steven Spielberg.
The point is not that Cronenberg may be a bit of an outsider, so he skirts... I mean, he's not some suck up to Hollywood. But the thing is that his career was made by this system. Everyone's career, to some extent, is dependent on the system. When you're in front of a camera, you get the kind of attention that people don't get. That messes you up, inevitably. But people still want it because the cost is always worth the attention and the achievement that you get by being in front of a camera all the time.
People think they want it. That's different. No, they don't.
Most people want it.
Look at Havana's character. Is sleeping in threesomes to try to get roles, having to basically degrade herself in multiple instances in order to get roles and become relevant again, wishing or cheering at the death of a child.
Yeah, but with Havana, yeah, she's a nasty personality, but what is her primary... You're saying people want to be that? The primary thing with her is envy of her mother. And why does she envy her mother? Because her mother was a natural star. she didn't have the decline. She starred in a bunch of movies and died in a fire. And in a way, that's a source of envy for Havana, because it basically made her, as they say in the movie, a cult figure. She did not have the luxury of dying early in her prime, so now she's trying to recatch the stardom that she had, but she wouldn't trade that for anything. She wouldn't trade the history of her stardom for anything. The awards she won, she wouldn't. So the satire is misfired only because
fired.
It is only because you have to address why they cling to it. It's something everyone wants. So you say, hey, you'd be better off just being a plumber than being some Hollywood star. No one believes that. Everyone wants to be a Hollywood star.
No, everybody wants to be a Hollywood star until they understand what it all entails.
I think they know what it entails.
In fact, in the current zeitgeist, there's been sort of an extremely negative outlook on Hollywood as a system and the traditional Hollywood star.
But how could you do it better?
Well, I mean, it's not presented anywhere in the film as some sort of flattering lifestyle. That's deliberate, because the point that it's trying to make is this isn't all that it's cracked up to be. You have to degrade yourself. You have to basically go morally bankrupt.
But none of these people would trade their stardom for anything. That's the problem. That you're looking at it from, these are nasty people with a lot of psychological issues that have come about because they've gotten this mass attention that other people don't get. Yes, everybody knows that comes with it. So they still want it. Everyone still wants it. It's because you can't say that being a Hollywood star is ultimately, the bad things associated with it, or the negatives associated with it, are overwhelm the positive attention and the glamour that you get. And so these satires don't work because there's no other way to do it. When you get attention like that on that level, you end up behaving this way, and you end up being neurotic to some extent, but you would not exchange it for anything, right?
No, I mean, I don't know where that's presented in the film. I think you're arguing about something that the film is not dealing with, except through maybe the lens of Robert Pattinson and Jerome. Because, like, for Jerome, there's this sort of idealism of Hollywood, right? He's an aspiring actor and writer. And he's viewing that as you know, some big admirable break that's worth working towards or aspiring to. But the film goes to distinct lengths to prove that not only, one, do you have to debase yourself in order to achieve that in such a way that you lose a significant amount of dignity, right? For Stafford and his wife, I mean, they're brother and sister.
Yeah, but that doesn't have anything to do with, that's a different psychological
well, no,
examination.
It's an obvious play on the nepotism aspect of Hollywood, which is that it's sort
okay,
of
but which character, you say all these characters end badly, and they do. Which character regrets their stardom? Not a single one of them do.
Well, I think
we don't hear Havana say, "I wish."
Benji might, to a
he
degree.
Doesn't.
I think he does.
No,
he's extremely cavalier towards the people who built his career, right?
Yeah.
When he's there to sort of talk to the producers about starring in Bad Babysitter 2 or whatever, he's there because of his mother. His mother wants him there. His mother's pushing him to do that. And he seems very uncomfortable there. When the producer comes to his trailer with his kids, he's he just slams the door in his face. Like there seems to be very little care for the repercussions of him treating people poorly. And I think it's because he really doesn't want this. He doesn't want stardom. He was thrust into it by parents who were successful and in the industry and got a big break. But based off his behavior throughout the film, he couldn't care less whether he got the role or not.
That's not the reading I have. The psychological. So, what is Agatha? What she is basically is, I guess you'd say, like an avenging fairy who obliterates continuities. The struggle that each of these people are having is, the memory of stardom or the ability to sustain stardom. It's not that they wish they did not have the stardom. It's that they wish they could keep it, they could stop it from declining, or they could stop their, I guess you'd say, the continuities involved in having to sustain it. And so in the case of Havana, she wants to play her mother in some sense to get back at the kind of effortless stardom that her mother had. She wants to have it for herself, even though she can't because she's washed up. In Benji's case, it's not so much that he dislikes the fact that he's a star. It's more that he's reached the top, and it's where do you go from here? And so the symbolism of the stars itself, the star is, from our perspective, a fixed thing up in the sky. It doesn't change. It doesn't have continuity. It's you don't have to keep going with your life once you've hit the top. And so Agatha shows up, and the constant reiteration of the poem on liberty is that liberty is ultimately the rejection of your psychological continuities. And it's not that Benji would say, I wish I was never a star. It's that I've become a star, and there's nowhere for me to go for liberty or freedom but to die in the fixed state at the top. And that's the source of his agreement to the suicide at the end. Because he's saying, I have achieved the pinnacle. I'm at the height of stardom, and to immortalize myself, to fix it in place, I have nowhere to go but to die. That's the only freedom available at that point.
No, that's not how I read it at all. I mean, he of course, he has a tremendous trajectory for his career. He's
messing it up. He's doing things that are going to destroy his career. He got booted off the set. He shot the dog. He choked that kid. I mean,
but he's doing a lot of things deliberately. His cavalier behavior is a deliberate choice on his part.
Right, because it's a recognition that I have hit the pinnacle. Where do I go from here?
Well, he's still a relative kid, so he could have a tremendously successful career in Hollywood for the rest of his life. What do you mean, where could he go from here?
He might also end up like Havana Sagran, basically washed up early.
40, 50 years down the road.
Well, you're assuming that, there's plenty of child actors that wash out before they're in their 20s. The point is that you have you've gotten to a pinnacle. You're a symbol. You're on a scale that's unimaginable for most people. And it's what do you do after that? Do you desperately try to retain it, or do you say, I have hit the top. I have no wish to persist. And so the movie is not critical of stardom, in itself. It's critical of the attempt to retain a solidified condition or a stardom that is unchanging. And it's when you start to slip, your source of freedom only becomes dying, because you die at the top. You become a mythological icon, you're set. And so it's the source of the romanticism that we give to, Marilyn Monroe or James Dean. It's die at the top and you're immortal. Stay alive and you'll have to suffer the long psychological consequence of reflecting on your past and wishing you still had that level of attention and that level of stardom that you've lost. That's
no, that's not, because I think Benji does desire to be free of the celebrity culture. I don't think he wants that.
What indication do you have of that? What's his concern on the set? It's that there's another kid who's stealing attention from him. That doesn't sound like somebody who wants to get out of it.
Well, it clearly doesn't cause him to not kill himself. So his drive to stay a star is not as great, presumably, as his willingness.
No, because that desire for self-sabotage, that desire to push the boundaries through drugs, through reckless behavior, because it is basically a recognition, which Agatha represents for everyone, that this is not a fixed state. That your only source of freedom after you've reached a certain point of individual attention, it's not to stay alive or to go on a ranch somewhere. It's that you literally have to die, and your myth is secure. So in Benji's case, is sabotage.
And why would he do that well before Agatha shows up?
Because he needs her to come back, in his case, literally to be a reflection of his past and the difficulties that he had to overcome to get to where he is. His parents...
What difficulties? His parents were rich, successful Hollywood.
There were difficulties. His house got burned down. He almost got killed by her when he was a kid. So it's his parents, Stafford and Christina, have a very fixed idea of stardom. Of we can, if we just, don't think about the problems that impede our careers. If we get rid of our daughter, if we send her off, we can keep our status in a fixed state, and this can be permanent. This can be a permanent life, right? And in Stafford's case, he's got a career. It seems to be working, but the cracks in the next generation with Benji are that he achieved stardom too quick. He's got nowhere to go from the top. And so he doesn't want to have the decline that Havana Sagrand had.
No, I think we see the reflection of somebody like Benji's character all the time in real life, of the weight of people exploiting you when you're that young, when you haven't been able to be mature enough to make your own decisions, but your parents have made them for you and thrust all this on you. It is what sends these people down the rabbit hole of drugs and drinking, and we see that all the time in real life. Britney Spears,
because you can't go up. There's nowhere to go.
It's because they never wanted the weight of that. The weight of a bunch of adults taking advantage of your success is tremendous.
They wouldn't trade it for anything. That's what you're missing.
I bet they
you say, I wish I just had a normal life and became a construction worker. No.
I bet if you were to talk to Amanda Bynes or any of these young stars,
we don't know what some people would say, but in the context of the movie,
I can't possibly imagine that somebody like her would be like, yeah, if I could do it, I'd do this all over again if given the opportunity. No, the weight of the fame and people taking advantage of her and her fame is what ruined her psychologically. And that's exactly what's happening with Benji, right? They're trying to control his life. Everybody's trying to make decisions for him. Everybody's trying to cash in on his success, right? You see those girls and his friend who has the dog like him for his success and nothing else. And so his whole life is surrounded around people taking advantage of him. And
You're reading your own. You're trying to make a movie that's not there. Nowhere does he ever renounce or express any regret for his past stardom. Nowhere does Havana Sagran do that. And so if you're saying these
Havana certainly doesn't. I don't put them in the same boat. I think they're two very different things.
well, Havana represents stardom it represents staying alive with a declining stardom. That's what she is, right?
Yeah, but I think Havana represents the desperation and the desperate lengths one will go to maintain stardom, whereas Benji has a far greater apathy towards it.
But it's not apathy because all the narcissism, all the pride in oneself is based off of being a star, which he's quite proud of. At no point does he give an indication, man, I wish I wasn't a child star. I wish I never had this life. That's not exactly what is being conveyed here.
No, I think there is sort of an intrinsic feeling on his part that he'd be happier had this celebrity being involved in Hollywood culture never happen. And that's why he finds solace in his sister, who's been cast out from the family, rejected, but shows a certain humanity that has been missing from his life.
Yeah, I think Agatha is not important insofar as she's an independent person, as she's sort of I called her an avenging fairy. Basically, she's the principal, which is why she's constantly reciting the poem. She's the principal that at a certain point, freedom comes only in abandoning the continuities that you have. Now, when you're Jerome and you're not a star and you're working towards it, that is shown to be quite a desirable thing in the movie. I mean, I don't see that the movie is criticizing. I mean, one, there's no alternative to stardom. If you make it big, you're going to get a lot of attention and you're going to come to some nasty personality traits. But it's basically saying that once you're there, where do you go? It's not saying you should have regretted that you got there in the first place. Because the movie kind of glamorizes, frankly, Clarice Taggart.
Yeah.
Right. And what did she do? She died in her prime. She was a major star. She died tragically in her prime. And she's immortalized for it. That's a positive view of what happened to her in the sense of she's become a cult figure. She's become a myth. She died at the height of her stardom. And that's all you can ask when you're at the top. That's that.
Yeah, that is not Benji's motivation at all.
Well, then why does he agree to the suicide?
Because it's a liberating from the existence that he currently has, which he does not like.
It's a new existence. You notice he wasn't even entertaining his sister's suggestions until he realized he had messed it up. He kicked his sister out when she showed up at the trailer at the shoot. It was only, he went back to her only when he had been thrown off he was thrown off the film, and he realized, I am going into eclipse. I'm going into decline. No, and her implicit message is, you are at the top. You have nowhere to go but to die. And that's why, that shows Agatha's admiration for Clarice Taggart. That's why the movie was playing. It's that when you're a star, I think, and you're at the top, you can only
Clarice, and the whole thing with Clarice I think is a suggestion that the industry used to be glamorous. Before the degeneracy came in, it was a glamorous thing with people you admired.
Yeah, but that's not true.
That's why, well, whatever, that's your own opinion.
I mean, you can go back to
that's why
Hollywood defines stars.
When she sees the ghost of her mother approaching her, it's always the ghost, reminding her of the sick stuff she's done to be able to, retain some sort of celebrity status. it's constantly talking about the comparisons between her physically, how she's old and worn out, and but the Clarice was young and beautiful. And it's constantly highlighting how you have this sort of pure idealist celebrity in Clarice Taggart that now has shifted to a degenerate, desperate want.
So how is that not confirming what I'm saying? It's just, it would have been better for Havana Sacran to immortalize herself when she was young, like her mother did.
Because that's the critique on Hollywood. That's the attack on Hollywood, is that it's become a cesspool of degeneracy.
But you act like you act like there was some change. It's been like this from the beginning. I mean, it's always been like this.
Yeah, I don't know that's necessarily the case.
True.
I think.
I mean, Marilyn Monroe was 50 years ago. Judy Garland was 70 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, those are instances of the system corrupting the people, not the people corrupting themselves to be a part of the system. That's very different. If you achieve fame and everybody starts putting, drugs and you get involved in all that, that is the system corrupting you. That is not you making degenerate decisions to remain relevant.
Yeah, maybe.
So that arguably is the change. And that's what you will hear if you look back at people reflecting on Marilyn Monroe. It's like everyone else around her was the problem. They were the ones pushing her to do stuff. They were the ones taking advantage of her. And she was the victim. Yeah. Now, if you look at today, the celebrity culture, it's people by their own, moral, a lack of morality and degenerate behavior becoming famous as a result of that degenerate behavior, whether it's debasing themselves for a role the way Havana does by getting in a threesome with the other actor and singer, or whatever, marrying, your relative to stay a part of the industry, like some sort of degenerate behavior taken as an individual action, over the system corrupting you. So you corrupting yourself to be a part of the system. I think that's the difference.
Okay, but your paradigm is a little too neat in that you're acting like, well, all these stars were just victims of abusive systems and studios and commercial avarice. They wouldn't trade it. I mean, you can't say that this isn't a desirable thing for most people. They want to be stars. They are complicit in their own fame, clearly.
I think that
this victim thing is only half true, which is that everyone wants stardom.
Right.
There's no alternative to the studio system that has come up, because the fact is when you get massive levels of attention, that is difficult on an individual psychological level to sustain. So it's not like the studio killed Marilyn, the studio killed Judy.
Well, that's what they would say.
They might try to say that, but really what it was a combination of, we have become a living myth, and it's very difficult to live as a living myth. It's almost impossible. The desire is to, I still have to do the normal things in life that everyone else does, but yet I'm a star. I'm a myth. There's on an individual level, there's extreme discomfort with that fact. And so the question for the stars is, where do I go? It's easy to blame the studio system for that, but that's just a reflection of human nature of anyone who gets into that kind of limelight. And so to me, the satire, if it's trying to be a satire, falls flat.
No.
Only insofar as there's no alternative to this. When you're a star, when you're a symbol that everyone recognizes, you will have to deal with the psychological consequences of being that.
Yeah, I would say there's
nothing that anyone can do about it.
Well, Yeah, I mean, I don't think that it necessarily. Well, one, I don't think it's necessary to provide a solution to be effective satire. You can mock things without, suggesting how something could be better. But I think it does, in a nihilistic way, suggest that the better alternative is to just burn it all down. Right?
That's the choice that a lot of them.
I mean, to me, Agatha, and the burning aspect of it, and her lighting the house on fire, shows like the outsider wanting to tear down Hollywood, seeing the degeneracy that's there and trying to light it all up in flames so that it just doesn't exist. That's, to me, the solution it's presenting, is if you just burn it all down, it's become a Sodom and Gomorrah that just needs to be wiped out.
That's not what it... She herself has reverence for... She's sitting there reciting the poem to the star, Clarice Taggart's star on the Hollywood Walk. She has immense reverence for stardom that you would say immortalized itself or made itself permanent. She does. She has an affinity for the idealistic, the simple idealistic view of Hollywood that a lot of average people have, because they haven't experienced it themselves. But which everyone still wants, including the people that have experienced it.
Does Agatha, is she shown to want it after her?
She's not really. She recognizes that it's not in the cards for her. I think of her less as an individual person and more as sort of a metaphoric representation of where do you go when you've reached the pinnacle of stardom. I mean,
she is Agatha?
She is, yeah.
Agatha was never a star.
As reflected in the other characters.
No.
Yes.
That's not right.
Her admiration for Clarice Taggart is based off of the fact that she died in a tragic fire, which for her is not so tragic because she died at the top. She immortalized herself. She didn't have the long decline.
Okay, I'm not talking about her. I'm talking about Agatha.
That's who I'm talking about.
Agatha has no relationship to Hollywood. Has been cast out by her parents from it.
Yeah.
How so a reverence for the idealistic view of Hollywood isn't. I guess she has that, but she quickly finds out that it's not that. It's a bunch of people stabbing you in the back and not with your best interest in mind. People who pretended to care about you, right?
You're acting like she has some kind of epiphany over the course of the movie. No, she doesn't.
Yes,
why did she go to Los Angeles? She knows exactly what she's going to do. She goes to Los Angeles with the intention of having the marriage ceremony with her brother and killing her brother.
No, what sets her off is, I mean, because her life, the way she's living it, really isn't that bad.
It's pretty bad. She's
back, and she's got a celebrity connection in Carrie Fisher, who gets her this job with somebody.
It's crazy to me that you saying her motivation on going to Los Angeles isn't to get her brother. That's the whole reason she goes.
I don't think so. I think part of it is actually a genuine desire to apologize for what she did. I think especially with her brother, she feels bad about that, whether she does for... Yeah.
No.
Yeah, it's the parents, it's Stafford and Christina that are the ones, especially Stafford, who's like, do not come back. We don't want you here. We don't want, like, she's not shown to come back with any animus towards them. It's after her father comes into the hotel room and is like, get out of here. Take $10,000, pack your bags, and leave.
No, she came with the she
No,
came with
she's
the
not-
the entire blueprint. The first thing she does when she gets to Los Angeles is go to the location of the burned house, right? And then she ends herself there with her brother. That was her entire point of going to Los Angeles in the first place. There's no change of, oh man, I could go to LA and be a happy family with my famous parents and my famous brother. That was never an intention of hers at all.
I don't think that. Well, okay, yeah, I wasn't going that far, but I was saying that you seem to be suggesting that her motivation was to basically do everything that she ends up doing. Which, no. She's presented as viewing the relationship with Jerome as extremely optimistic, as a potential future there. That's undercut when he sees Jerome having sex with Havana in the car, and she realizes all this idealism, all this perfect Hollywood romance.
The attraction to Jerome is based off the fact that she basically saw the end of Stardom before she was even a star. That was the whole reason why she set fire to the house and tried to kill Benji when he was a kid. In Jerome's case, what she's asking is something he can't do, which is, I want you to see this through and realize that if you get everything you want, you will be where I am now. I haven't gone through Stardom, but this is the end of Stardom. It's the desire for release, for liberty, to be achieved by death because you are at the top. She's almost seen the end of the... Yes, it is.
Ever.
She's seen through... You could say, if you want to, she's seen through the facade, but I don't think the movie necessarily gives that view.
No,
because
when does she articulate that to him?
That's the source of her interest in him.
No, it isn't.
What is she talking about when she pitches him the mythological script?
No,
what it is she is saying, you have this aspiration to be some kind of star. You have this aspiration to make it in Hollywood. When you have made it, you will come to see things the way I see them, which is your only source of release.
Why does she do anything she does then? If her sole goal is to just go there, get her brother so they can kill themselves, why does she start writing a script with this guy? Why does she stick around at the job?
The script is not a literal script.
Yeah, there's a scene where they're reading lines from the script.
Yeah, it's a recitation of real life. I mean, it's not. It's a script in that it's a thing you say, but she's really playing out something that would be done in life, which she then does with her brother.
No, there is. She is not presented as having any kind of ill intention coming in there. And she seems to be embracing the stuff she does have when she's there. The job, working with Havana. She becomes, upset with Havana when she sees her hooking up with Jerome in the car.
Yeah.
And that's because that instance is what gives her the realization that this is just a degenerate industry with degenerate people just doing things purely out of self-interest.
Which she always knew.
But then you wouldn't
You're
have
acting
the
like
movie.
there's this great change.
Then you wouldn't have the movie.
So she gets a job for convenience so she can bide her time until she can convince her brother to go do the ceremony, which clearly was the purpose of her entire life since she tried it before and just got out of the mental institution to come try it again. What she is it's I don't think it's helpful to think of her as an individual person with separate motivations. She is a symbol of the only release that's available when you've gotten to Stardom.
No, I don't.
Now, I mean, you could be like Greta Garbo and cut your career off and go into, seclusion. But most people can't do that. Most people have to have the I guess you'd say the pompousness, the ceremony of going out on top. And so she brings that notion that this is what you do when you're a star. You're now facing your decline. This is what you have to do. And at no point, I mean, she admires the prestige that the job with Havana Sagran gives her, but she doesn't admire Havana Sagran. In Havana Sagran is everything that she is trying to avoid for her brother, which is that her brother will become another Havana Sagran if he doesn't do this ceremony, this suicide thing that she says is so crucial for when you've reached the top. That her entire motivation is on the basis of that insight.
I think the suicide pact thing is her way of saying you can't lose yourself in this industry. And so
why doesn't she say
you always have a touch?
Why doesn't she say let's run off to Florida then? Get out of this. You've declined. It's very much a death drive thing. It's not some like, hey, you got to get out of this before it corrupts you. It's you have to die. That was her point from the beginning, is that you have to die to have liberty. Because if we go run off to Florida, you're just going to be dreaming of the days when you were getting massive attention, and you're going to be wishing you had them, and you're going to be degrading yourself to try to desperately get them again.
So we're going to have to leave that there and move on to the next topic here, which is the pathos of the character. So obviously, I think it's an intentionally divisive and tough to stomach movie with characters that are deliberately unsympathetic for the reasons you've already covered. They're reflections of Hollywood types that it's trying to tear down. But I do think there is some pathos in Agatha's character, insofar as she retains, to play into what we were just talking about, she retains qualities not consistent with the Hollywood culture, celebrity culture type, and those are presented as virtuous qualities. And so her sacrifice does mean something more, achieve something higher on an emotional level as a result of it's the place of audience relatability.
Oh, I'm not even sure she dies.
All right, Matt.
No, think about it. She's had a whole lifetime of taking all these drugs in this amount. You could make an argument that she would survive.
Well, that's not in the film, so that's not.
Yeah, well,
and the question is, it's not even the question. The question is, do you have any feeling?
Agatha is a symbolic persona. She's not a person.
So do you have any feeling for her?
Well, that's not really. She certainly doesn't get pathos because she's single-minded. She's more important for what she represents to others than she is for herself. I mean, you're not a tragic figure if your ambition is to die, and that's always been your ambition.
Well, is her ambition to die or to save?
In her mind, it's a kind of salvation.
Okay. So is that not an admirable thing? Is that not a martyr sort of?
Well, it's not necessarily admirable. It's not, doesn't give out pathos, because if somebody's so devoted to dying and then they achieve it, which you're looking at is not tragic.
She's not devoted to dying. She's devoted
to die.
Providing an outlet from the degeneracy or toxic aspects for her brother and her. And that outlet just so happens to be dying, but the goal isn't to just die. She could do that at any time. And she could, she could go kill anybody she wants at any given time. The motivation is to save her brother from what you would say is experiencing the fall of being at the top. What I would say is the degenerate culture.
Okay, but she obviously didn't save him from that because he was in it and then he became a part of it. So all you're saying is, well, she's saving him from further
Right.
life in that situation, which it's not like she does, some work to convince him, but it's ultimately his own choice, not hers. So she should be taken to be an aspect of a symbolic representation of the inevitable conclusion that all stars have to have, which is that it is better to flame out than it is to have the decline. Her own perspective is uniform the whole movie. You act like there's this big change, like she goes to Los Angeles thinking that there's a chance she might become a star herself. I don't see any of that.
Well, not necessarily that she'll become a star, but that she'll have a comfortable, happy life. I mean, the way, at least the way
There's no indication that
at least the way the character is performed. Well, look at the actual acting performance. She seems genuinely interested in this Jerome guy and wanting to see him. When Havana asks her about him, she's sort of like that. Yeah, nervous.
If Jerome happened to be
nervousness,
if Jerome happened to be more receptive to her, what do you think she would be trying to do with him? Commit suicide.
I don't know where that's coming from. She seems genuinely interested in him and seeing him.
Yeah, because she wants to impart the wisdom that he obviously cannot see, that the end of stardom is the resolve towards death, but he's not a star, so he doesn't see it. She basically wants to take him out of the rat race of trying to make a career in Hollywood. And the implication, I take it, by the fact that she brings him to that location and they recite some of those lines that she would later do with Benji, is that if he was up to it, she probably would have had a suicide pact with him. That's the implication, isn't it?
No, not to me.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, she's very clearly obsessed with one thing, which is to have this.
In every
it goes to the ghosts too, also, which is that she saw them, and these are basically her insight is, I didn't even need to become a star to see where this leads. Everyone else only starts to see the ghosts of the dead when they're starting their decline. And so they see the wisdom in her mind that she attained without actually having become a star.
Maybe that's how she started. There's some point in the middle of the movie where she does not feel that way.
No, it's always the only reason she started working for Havana Sagran was so she could get near Benji. It's the only reason.
Okay, right. But then the whole subplot of her and Jerome, you're saying
it's her trying to convince Jerome.
Why? If she's there for her brother to do this thing, why is she starting a relationship with another guy? I don't understand.
Not a she's attempting to impart the same thing to everybody, which is, you're trying to be a star. I'm trying to show you where this leads. Benji, you've been a star. I tried to basically flame you out before you became a big one, and now that you've become one, you should see the wisdom of what I was trying to do. With Havana Sagran,
I'm talking about, why would the movie go to lengths to show a developing relationship?
It's not a developing relationship. There's two.
If she's there for her brother and to do this suicide pact with her brother, your logic doesn't make sense.
Because she'll do it with everyone. She'd do it with Havana if Havana could see it, but Havana is obviously still trying to pursue stardom, which is the real reason why she's got to die. Because eventually Agatha says, you know what, you will never be a star like your mother. In fact, from Agatha's point of view, she did Havana a favor by giving her a memorable death before she could continue her decline. This is basically the only desire she has in the movie, Agatha, which is to convince all these people who have been stars, most importantly my brother, but everyone else, that I have the wisdom I have the map of where this goes, of where you will eventually see things my way, and maybe it takes overcoming massive delusions like Havana, maybe it takes actually becoming famous like Jerome, but you will get there. That's her point with everyone.
No, I don't think that's. I think that maybe that's the idea she went in with, even though I'm not sure about that. Maybe it's the idea she ends up with, but in the middle of the movie, that is not at all showcased through what she says and what she does. And
why does she go to Los Angeles to try to get a career? Try to have a happy life again?
Yeah,
she says those things, but they're not reflected in her actions.
She's an isolated. Well, she's obviously got issues, but she's an isolated person that I think seeks a genuine human connection with very fake people. And
yeah, you're reading her. You're reading her. She really needs to be read symbolically, not as a actual psychological. As a coherent psychological individual. She's an avenging angel. It's basically like this. I have the insight to see where Stardom leads. In a way, she is the map. It's the ultimate destination of all stardom, which I have seen. I haven't been a star myself, but I've seen it. And so her goal is to convince the stars that everyone she meets who is trying to be a star, who is a star, who was once a star, that this is where this goes. That's her entire goal.
And there is no indication that she's trying to convince Havana of that at all. No conversation they ever have or action she does to Havana indicates that.
Then why do you explain her obsession with Havana's mother, which is clearly emphasized by the movie?
Well, because I think that there's sort of this pure idealism that is fascinating and interesting to people outside the industry.
Yeah, but it's deeper than that. It's that she basically admires Clarice Taggart for her death, which she actually sought to emulate herself by setting her own house on fire and burning herself. In fact, you could even go so far as to imply that she might have had Clarice Taggart in mind when she initially set the fire. Because that is her wisdom in action, which is when you're at the top, your only way out, the only thing you can do, the only way you can achieve liberty is to make a bonfire of yourself and become immortalized. So she doesn't sit down with Havana because Havana obviously doesn't understand any of this because she's so hyper-focused on attempting to resurrect a stardom that's long gone. It's only because Agatha sees that this is not a person that could be able to take in what I'm saying. But the others, the men, Jerome and her brother Benji, are able to at least listen to it, and in Benji's case, are able to embrace it. And so she's not at no point. If there was at no point is it shown that she's trying to lead some kind of normative existence. She says, "I'm here to make amends," but for her that means something very different than it does for them. There's not a motivation to try to have some kind of stable life.
I disagree. I think she's reminded her time away maybe caused her to forget just how degenerate everything.
Explain this? Why did Agatha see the ghosts before? It seems that all these people, so Havana sees the ghost of her mother, Benji sees the ghost of the non-Hodgkin's girl, and also the Micah kid who died. They're all dead people.
Yeah.
The implication, I take it, in the ghosts we see, is that they come to the stars when the stars are declining. It's like, you have to die now. Death is your only way out. because you have reached the pinnacle and now you're going down. Agatha sees them from the beginning. She represents the ultimate logic of stardom from the beginning. And if she could convince someone like Jerome to not have to even go through it, because this is where it ends up, she would like to, but obviously she can't. She can only convince Benji when he starts to see the things that she always saw, basically, right?
Oh, she does in the end. I don't get the implication from any conversation in the middle of the film that is her. That's what she's trying to do.
Well, okay. Why does she continue?
Especially as it pertains to Jerome and Havana, I don't get that impression at all that she's trying to convince these two that
the only thing she's talking to Jerome about is she's reciting the poem and she's pitching him the script, which is the script that she ultimately says with Benji when they die. Yeah. That seems to me to be pretty hyper-focused on one thing.
Well, I think that she may come to that philosophy after she's reminded of why she had that philosophy to begin with. It takes the reminder of her seeing Jerome sleep with Havana calling her out as dirty and taking a, power stance over her, seeing Benji not kill the kid, but choke out the kid, like seeing all of the degenerate behavior and seeing her father beat her up, trying to cover up basically the incestuous relationship that he has with his sister because he doesn't want that out. Like, it's the reminder that all of these people are working in self-interest and doing degenerate things, which is why I ever had this philosophy to begin with. I think she has a genuine regret at some point of burning down the house. She's reminded by the end of why she did it and why it was justified.
No, but her obsession with the poem belies that. What is the flesh that says yes?
But
what is the flesh that says yes? It's everyone.
Benji reads that too before she shows up.
I know. I think the implication is that it was sent to him. I don't know, maybe. But it's basically the people who understand where I have come to. She is a walking symbol in her burned state of a star that is flamed out. She's not really a person in that sense. She is a symbol of the star that persists in life who has burned out. That is what she is. And the only thing that she's preoccupied with in the movie is convincing stars that the end of the road is what I'm presenting.
Okay. Well, can symbols or allegories not also have pathos?
No.
Why not?
Because they're important for what they represent, not for any empathetic capacity that they imbue in the viewer. Agatha's not really a person. She has a single drive. She's
right, but does the audience relate and empathize with her motivation?
Well, that depends on whether you accept that the only option at the top is to flame out, which is her wisdom that she's trying to impart to people who are at the top or are trying to get to the top. If you have the idea that there's another way, then she's not so sympathetic. But if you accept her romantic point, in the sense of romanticism, if you accept the idea that death is the only liberty for those who have achieved the pinnacle, then she becomes sympathetic on the basis of that philosophy. But as a person, she's a symbol of that understanding, not so much an actual psychological individual.
Yeah, well, that's where we're going to have to leave it. obviously, interesting movie, worth thinking about, and not for everybody, but definitely has some themes worth dissecting and thinking about. So check us out for next week's episode on The Pledge, and we'll see you next time on Dueling Banjos.